Okay, we are. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. All glories to our revered speaker for today, Her Grace, Mother Malati Devi, who will be speaking to us. It's always an honor to have our big auntie to be with us, to share her blessings and wisdom with us. And it's also more auspicious in the sense that today is Monday. It's considered the beginning of the busy working week. And today also is the divine appearance of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So we believe our mother will share some insights about His Divine Grace with us today.
Absolutely.
Yes, we encourage the devotees to be very, very attentive to relish this nectar. So again, thank you so much, Mother, and we may put the verse on the screen and then you take it over from here.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Thank you. So verse is going on the screen. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Savai Vishwa Shisham Garbo Deva Karmatma Saktimam Vibhajatmanat Manam Ekada Dasada Chidaha. So can you move it up so we can see the actual translation? Can you move the verse so we can see the translation? I thought you were going to put the verse on the screen. There's a beautiful devotee. Look, Devi's on the screen.
Yeah, sorry, I think Sadif Prabhu is having some connections. I'm going to put the verse on the screen now.
Okay. Actually, I had it pulled up and then I thought, okay, I'll just read from you.
Here is the verse.
What's the chapter? Chapter 6?
Yes, chapter 6, text number 7.
Okay.
Yeah, here it is.
Okay, so I'll read from my computer. I already read the Sanskrit. Translation: the total energy of the Mahatattva in the form of the gigantic Virat Rupa divided himself by himself into the consciousness of the living entities, the life of activity and self-identification, which are subdivided into 1, 10, and 3 respectively. Purports. Consciousness is the sign of the living entity or the soul. The existence of the soul is manifest in a form of consciousness called Gyan Shakti. The total consciousness is that of the gigantic Virat Rupa, and the same consciousness is exhibited in individual persons. The activity of consciousness is performed through the air of life, which is of 10 divisions. The areas of life are called prana, apana, udana, vyana, samana, and are also differently qualified as naga, kurma, Kirkara, Devata, and Dhananjaya. The consciousness of the soul becomes polluted by the material atmosphere, and thus various activities are exhibited in the false ego of bodily identification. These various activities are described in Bhagavad Gita 2:41 as Bahu Shakahi Anantascha Budayo Vyavasyayanam. The conditioned soul is bewildered into various activities for want of pure consciousness. In pure consciousness, the activity is one. The consciousness of the individual soul becomes one with the supreme consciousness when there is complete synthesis between the two. The monists believe that there is only one consciousness, where the sattvatas, or the devotees, believe that although there is undoubtedly one consciousness, they are one because there is agreement. The individual consciousness is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness as instructed by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 1866. Sarvadharman paritvaja mamikam saranam raja. The individual consciousness, Arjuna, is advised to dovetail with the supreme consciousness and thus maintain his conscious purity. It is foolish to try to stop the activities of consciousness, but they can be purified and thus maintain his conscious purity. Oh, sorry. It is foolish to try to stop the activities of consciousness, but they can be purified when they are dovetailed with the Supreme. This consciousness is divided into three modes of self-identification according to the proportion of purity. Adhyatmika, our self-identification with the body and mind. Adhibhotika, our self-identification with material products. And Adidaivika, or self-identification as a servant of the Lord. Of the three, Adidaivika, self-identification is the beginning of purity of consciousness in pursuance of the desire of the Lord. So, just a second here.
You want to read the text, Himida?
No, I want to, at this point here, because there's not even a huge amount of time, but I have a huge amount of information on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So I want to take the opportunity to glorify Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, known also as the Simha Guru, the Lion Guru. So, Om Magyan Timarandasya Yanana Sakalaya Chaktu Militam Yena Tasme Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manohabishtam Sirapadam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam. And then the pranams to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Nomine. Everyone can also say these. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane. Devi Shesha Shri. And then the pranams to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Dinamane Sri Varsavana Videvi Dayatya Kripa Daye Krishna Samana Vigyana Dayani Prabhave Namaha Budhurio Jala Premadya Sri Rupanuga Bhaktita Sri Gora Karuna Sakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Srimutaya Dinatarane Rupanuga Varudapa Siddhanta Dvantaharane. So During the time of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the pure religion, and of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he is the father of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So during his time, the pure religion of Vaishnavism, as was taught by the Supreme Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was essentially lost. And it was lost to the point of being considered a degraded cult of religion, religious fanaticisms and sentimentalists. Like respectable people had no respect for the Vaishnavas. So with a desire to present the actual teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Bhaktivinoda wrote and published many books in Bengali, Sanskrit, and English. And he traveled to parts of India preaching and giving lectures. Thakur Bhaktivinoda practically single-handedly revived the pure movement of Nama Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord, presenting the glories of Lord Chaitanya to learned men. And he prayed. Now here's another thing. He was not born a Vaishnava. Srila Bhaktivinoda was actually born into a family. They were worshiping Chandi, consort of Lord Shiva. And they were worshiping Chandi in a very grandiose way. And Bhaktivinoda was observing this, but he was thinking there had to be more than this to life. He didn't get the meaning. What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of this? He related one time how there was this big festival, and the family of Bhaktivinoda was quite wealthy. They had a huge compound surrounded by, very large retaining walls. And as a young boy, maybe, very young, below 10, one of his room was on the wall and it had a little window. And from that little window, he would look out at night. And they had a chowkidar, a gatekeeper at night. And he would like tap, psst, psst, come here. And he would start asking these chowkidar questions about life. And amazingly enough, this humble chowkidar was a Vaishnav. And he told this little boy about, Kedarnath, about Lord Chaitanya. And he told him about a book about Lord Chaitanya known as the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So as Bhaktivinoda went on in age, he wanted to get that book. He never forgot this. But it was so degraded now in the entire of Bengal, West Bengal, he could not find one copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It wasn't until he was 34 years old, he was now in Puri. He was a magistrate there. He gets a knock on his door, and there was an unknown person with a manuscript, and not a book yet, a manuscript, meaning on the leaves, tied together. He hands it. He goes, "I believe you are searching for this." And it was the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he studied that book. He read it. He studied it. And he had, from that study, from the reading of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which he finally got, he became convinced of the divinity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as being none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he began to pray to Lord Chaitanya to send him an assistant and a successor from the Lord's personal staff of preachers. And as an answer to the prayer of Thakur, a son was born to him on February 6th, 1874, during his time as the government magistrate in Jagannath Puri. So through various signs, the Lord showed Thakur Bhaktivinoda and his good wife that this great soul had been sent by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to carry on the preaching work started by the Thakur. And there was different signs, like when he was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck, much like a sacred thread of the Brahmanas. And during the annual, now he was like 6 months old, during the annual Rath Yatra festival, Jagannath's cart came to a stop right in front of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's home. And they were trying, sometimes the cart that was at Leela of the Lord, and people were pushing the cart. Sometimes you get elephants to try to push the cart. But the cart was stuck at that time in front of the home. And Bhaktivinoda's wife took the opportunity to take the child to see Lord Jagannath. And since she was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's wife, who was the manager, as part of being the magistrate, he was the manager of Jagannath, manager of the temple, she was allowed on the cart for darshan, and she placed little Bhaktivinoda under, not Bhaktivinoda, sorry. She put the little child who was to become Bhaktisiddhanta, she put him at the feet of Jagannath. And at that same time, one of the huge garlands fell and encircled the child, and it filled the heart of Bhaktivinoda with joy. This child was certainly the answer to his prayers. So as he was growing, Thakur instructed him in the science of Krishna consciousness. So by the age of 7, Bimala Prasad Datta, that was his name, his given name, Bimala Prasad Datta, later to be known as Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati. He had memorized all 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, and not just like a little parrot. He could adequately explain each one. And as a young boy, it's a famous story, he took an unoffered mango from the deity room and he ate it. So Srila Bhaktivinoda chastised him. That was not proper Vaishnava, to eat food that was not offered to the Lord. And he took his father's words very seriously. Young boy, he made a vow, I will never eat mango again. Actually, it was, I will never eat a ripe mango again. So through his life, he kept that vow very faithfully. And if somebody would offer him a mango, no, I cannot take. I am a great offender. The reason I make the point about it was the ripe mango, because he would take green mango chutney later on. Anyway, at the age of 10, he was initiated by his father, Harinam, into the Hare Krishna mantra and in the Shringadev mantra. Due to his lifelong celibacy, he had a clear memory. Even in his last days, he could recall any passage of any book he had read, even 50 years prior. He was sent to college, and in college, he read every book in the library, and he made private studies into higher mathematics, international history and philosophy, and Vedic astronomy. And he was attending a cultural association in Calcutta called the August Assembly. Means very high-level discussions on various philosophical and theological topics. And he was a powerful debater. So nobody could stand up against his vast erudition and scholarship. And then in 1896, at the age of 23, so he was 23, and our Srila Prabhupada was born a year earlier in 1896. So this was 1897 when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta opened, this Bimal Prasad still, opened a school in Calcutta, which he called Saraswata Chatuspati, where he began teaching Vedic astronomy. So many prominent scholarly Calcutta gentlemen were among his students. And at the time, he was simultaneously editing 2 monthly journals, and he published several authoritative documents on Vedic astrology. And then he was offered a chair, like a tenureship, be a tenured professor at the University of Calcutta, but he declined, thinking this might be an impediment to my devotional life. Just as Jamuna Devi declined George's offer he said, I can make you famous. And she thought, oh, maybe that would be good in terms of spreading Krishna consciousness. So she said, let me think about this. And then the next day she said, no, I cannot do this because I think it will be an impediment to my devotional life. So going back a couple of years, in 1895, he had attended the meetings of his father's Vishwa Vaishnava Rajasabha in Calcutta. And So he was always putting himself in very high level association, and he was competent to be in that association. In 1901, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he requested his son to take initiation into the Gayatri Mantra. He already had Harinam. Now he wanted him to take Gayatri Mantra, accepting a spiritual master. And he requested his son to take initiation from Gorakishore Das Babaji, who was a renowned Vaishnava. He was a saint in Navadvip. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he approached the Babaji for initiation, but Gorakishore, who had no disciples, he refused to accept such an erudite pundit because he himself, Gorakishore, he considered himself illiterate. So Srila Bhakti, Bhima Prasad, Thakur Saraswati, he went back to his father and he related what had happened. And Bhaktivinoda sent him back again. And his son came back again, same news. So the next time, Thakur told his son, unless you take initiation from Gorakishore Das Babaji, your life is useless and you may no longer enter this house. So then Bhaktisiddhanta set off with great determination. And he didn't become discouraged. He became more determined. People had integrity in those days. They had character. So upon meeting Gorakishore Das Babaji, and it happened to be on a bridge, he said, if you don't accept me as your disciple, I will jump off this bridge and kill myself. My father has told me that human life is worthless without a spiritual master. So if you refuse to accept me as your disciple, I must kill myself. So when he saw the young man's sincerity of purpose, then Babaji accepted him as his only disciple. So from that year, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta traveled with Thakur Bhaktivinoda on his pilgrimages to all the principal holy places in India. And at the same time, he compiled a Vaishnava encyclopedia named Vaishnava Manjusha. In 1900, he was staying in Puri, where he began to publicly preach the holy precepts of the Bhagavatam. And then in 1904, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati traveled in East Bengal. In 1905, he traveled to the far southern provinces of India. He was lecturing, he was writing, he was debating, he was fully absorbed in propagating the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the south of India, he traveled to places like Simalatam and Madras, Tirupati, Kanchipura, and many other places of Puri. And his strong preaching gave him such a reputation that his name brought fear into the hearts of his philosophical adversaries. The perverted so-called religious activities of different cults and sects, they were doomed in the presence of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He did not back down. He stood tall and he spoke the truth. At an all-India conference of pundits in Midnapur in 1911, presided over by Pandit Vishwambarananda Dev Goswami, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta took the place of Thakur Bhaktivinoda, who was ill at the time. So everybody was astounded. Everybody knew Srila Bhaktivinoda, and they were expecting him. And who was this young person? Who was he? But he lectured to an astounded audience on the comparative position of a Brahmana and a Vaishnava. And after the discourse, the crowd surged forth. They wanted to offer respects. They wanted to touch his feet. You know how it is, but it was like too much. So one of the policemen took a bucket of water and he stuck Thakur, Saraswati Thakur's feet in the water, and then he just threw all the water over the crowd, and they were satisfied and avoided a incident. But that the president of that conference called him the other self of Srila Sukadeva Goswami. Then in a year later in 1912, he was traveling, he was preaching in different parts of Bengal. And then in 1913, he established the Bhagwat Press in South Kolkata, which was later moved to Mayapur. And then to Krishnanagar, where he began to publish many carefully. He was publishing and editing books. And something I was remembering, it's in the autobiography, the biography by Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Bhaktivinoda, not only was he like a learned person, not only was he a magistrate, but he knew all kinds of practical skills, and he imparted these skills to his son. And one of them was how to print. Not just, take the manuscript and hand it over, how to typeset, how to run the printing press, how to manage the press, and if it would break, how to repair it. So they were not only high level philosophically astute and pure Brahmins, but they knew how to practically manage things. So altogether, he published, edited, and wrote about 61 works, as well as 8 different journals. And he had this monthly journal just about the Lord. And somebody said, how is it possible to publish a journal every month just about God? And he replied, here in this world, there are thousands of newspapers and magazines reporting the stale, repetitious happenings of this limited space. So for reporting the news of the unlimited spiritual realm concerning the eternal, ever-fresh Supreme Personality of Godhead, we could publish a magazine at every second. What to speak of monthly. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada always stressed the importance of publishing and distributing Vaishnava literature as a means of educating the mass of ignorant humanity. And in order to facilitate the printing of these books and journals, he actually established 4 presses: the Gaudiya printing works in Calcutta, the Nadia Prakash printing works in Mayapur, and the Bhagavat Press in Krishnanagar, and then the Paramarthi printing works in Calcutta. In Cuttack. So the first one was the Bhagavat Press in Krishnanagar in 1914, and then there was the Gaudiya printing works in Calcutta in 23, the Nadia Prakash printing works in Mayapur in 28, and then the printing works at Cuttack in 36. And he called these presses the big mridanga, the bigger mridangas, because the sound that they could produce could be heard all over India, but to speak of the world. So in 1914, on the disappearance of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur from this mortal world, the task to carry on the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu now lay in the hands of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. And he took over as the editor of his father's journal, the Sahajana Toshani, a monthly Vaishnava paper in Bengali. And then in 1927, he took that monthly, he converted it from a monthly to a fortnightly, means twice a month, publication called The Harmonist. In 1918, at the age of 24, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati accepted the title Goswami Maharaj by taking to the renounced order of life, sannyas. And he did it in somewhat, you might say, unconventional way, because his guru was no longer present. And actually, sannyas order had been largely omitted. But just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he took sannyas in order to preach. Bhaktisiddhanta also took that title, took that austerity, took that renounced order of life in order to preach. He put a picture of his Guru Maharaj, and through that picture, he accepted the order of sannyas. And on the same day, he established his first Vaishnav monastery, the Chaitanya Math, at Sridham Mayapur, which became his preaching headquarters. And then later that year, one important figure in a popular religious organization, he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He was so impressed by his power of purity that he immediately begged to become a disciple. And he would arrange for Bhaktisiddhanta's transportation between Mayapur and Calcutta. And he rented a small house for him in Calcutta for expanding the preaching of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. And that house became known as Bhakti Vinod Avgyana and was later known as Sri Gaudiya Math, when later it was moved into a large marble building in Bagh Bazaar in North Calcutta in 1930. And of course, then, going from the little place to the big place was not without difficulty and squabbling. And Bhaktisiddhanta infamously quoted that better to sell the marble and print books. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, then in quick succession, he spread his Gaudiya mission to every part of India, and he was attracting thousands to the banner of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At the time of his passing, he had opened 64 Gaudiya Maths for the propagation of spiritual life and Bhagavat philosophy. And in these maths, he established the worship of the Archa Vigraha, the deity form of the Lord, so that his disciples would not become impersonalists. So this deity worship was executed according to the principles of Sanatana Goswami's book, Sri Hari Bhakti Vilas. One time, a very important gentleman approached Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he said, "Your Gaudiya Math is so nice. You should open temples in all cities of the world." And Srila Bhakti Vinod replied, "My real visit is to establish temples in everyone's heart." One time, a very, I think it was a barrister even, very learned person, and he came to see Bhaktisiddhanta in Mayapur. And he had a question he wanted to ask him, and he came all that way just to meet him. And Srila Bhakti Vinod told him, go ask the pujaris. Ask your question to the pujaris. And because he was a sincere person, he could have said, "What? I'm coming to see you. I'm a learned barrister." He was a sincere soul. He went to the pujaris. And at the time, the pujaris were cleaning the brass arti paraphernalia. And that was a pretty messy business in those days. They would use imli paste, from tamarind, and ashes from the fire. And they would rub it and rub it and rub it. I mean, I used to do that sometimes in Mayapur when I was cooking for Prabhupada to keep his brass cooker clean and shiny. So it was, a little bit messy. And so the pujaris are cleaning the brass, and he folds his hands. "I have come to ask you a question. Your Guru Maharaj said I should ask you." So they said, "Well, okay, but here, clean this paraphernalia with us, And he didn't hesitate. Here he comes in his nice, it must have been very, very nice white pucka, dhoti, dhoti and kurta, etc. Immediately he rolled up his sleeves and he began polishing that brass. And obviously he was getting, all kinds of stains. And then finally the brass was done. It was clean. And he folded his palms and made his pranams to these pujaris. And they said, "Now, what is your question?" And he said, "My question has been answered." Such a humble soul. One time another devotee was having problems. He was actually, he might have been one of the sannyasis even. Yeah, I think he had 12 sannyasis. But anyway, this devotee was having problems. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta sent him to the field, the agricultural field, which at the time was planted with aubergine, with eggplants, right? You work in here. And he humbly accepted that service. Here he was, big Brahmin preacher, and he's working in the, as a menial labor. But it actually was what he needed. And from that activity, he also became purified and rectified. Srila Bhaktivinoda was such a powerful, bold preacher. As I mentioned earlier, he was known as the Sima Guru, the lion guru. Sometimes on a morning walk, he would come across a Mayavadi, an impersonal sannyasi, and he would grab him and shake him while verbally chastising him. Can any of us imagine doing that nowadays? We'd be arrested for, some kind of abuse. Anyway, when these Mayavadis would see him coming, they would just run away in the other direction. So one time, a large impersonalist Vedanta society in Calcutta invited him to a debate on the condition he could not use Srimad Bhagavatam as a scriptural evidence in the debate. And then they said, and neither can you speak on Mahabharata, Ramayana, or any of the Puranas or the Pancharatnas. And he agreed. Then they called him again, saying he couldn't use any evidence from the Vedas, the Upanishads, or the Smriti texts. He could only speak from the Vedanta Sutra. And he agreed to that also. And then finally they called him up and said, don't bother to come. They were so intimidated by him. From 1919 to 1929, he was constantly traveling all over India, lecturing to crowds of thousands, debating and destroying various bogus religious sects, and performing parikramas to the holy places with his disciples, to different sacred sites, with a view to improve them and preserve them. And during these travels, he installed the footprints of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in 108 places where the Lord had traveled during his sannyas life, and he recorded the dates when Mahaprabhu had been there. So in 1919, he had completed the preaching tour over North and East Bengal. So in 1920, he was more touring extensively in the places of Bihar, Orissa, and Sautal Parganas, establishing temples in some of those places. And then in 1922, he visited Vrindavan, the place of Lord Krishna's pastimes. And in this Braj Mandal Parikrama, he went with hundreds of disciples, and he gave lectures at all the major temples and places of the Lord's pastimes. And in the year 1925, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, along with a large group of disciples, on this Braj Mandala Parikrama, and he was visiting the, again, holy places of Mahaprabhu. And it was, I think, yeah, it was like, so it was during one of these times, Srila Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada, he was there and he met with his Guru Maharaj, one of the few times he would meet him. And it was during that time that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said to him, if you ever get books, if you ever get money, print books. And he took that to heart. During that time in the Parikrama, he was lecturing every night. And Srila Prabhupada, our Prabhupada, would go and sit tight and listen. And he admitted he spoke in such a high-level language he couldn't always understand, but still he was eager to hear. And that was noted by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So one evening, some of the other disciples, they were going to some other temple, and they said to, our Prabhupada, Abai, you want to come with us? And he goes, no, I will sit and listen. And from that, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he said, I have noted this boy, this young man, he's a young man, he likes to hear. And he was there with his own son, and he was sitting and listening. He wasn't talking, he wasn't falling asleep. So then in early part of 26, he toured in Assam, and it marked a very kind of important place in the Gaudiya movement of Sri Chaitanya and in history of India as well, because in various ways, he brought around changes and improvements in all the sacred places bringing them together under the banner of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. And wherever he would go, he was being received as a savior, like as a religious reviver, like a prophet by everyone who came in contact with him. And in most states, he would be received as an honored state guest with a public reception. So even though these tours were highly successful, as his life, they weren't without problems, because many of Srila Saraswati Thakur's disciples, although initiated Brahmins and sannyasis, they weren't born into Brahmana families. So along the way, while traveling, the so-called smarter Brahmin shopkeepers, they'd close their shops. They would refuse to sell provisions to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and his disciples. Srila Saraswati Thakur would always preach very strongly against these nonsense philosophy of the proud, arrogant caste brahmanas. And he always emphasized the needlessness of material qualifications to receive spiritual life. Just like nowadays, even in our own movement, you introduce a person and they start talking about, oh, this one has a PhD, they have an MB, they have a this or that. Like, so what? What is the spiritual qualification? And no, of course, it's good that people know that we're not uneducated people, but our real education is through our spiritual knowledge. So, and anyone, regardless of caste, sex, nationality, pastime, background, Srila Bhaktivinoda, he would give spiritual life to whoever it was. And then these caste Brahmins, they protested against him for turning those who weren't born into Brahmana families into Brahmanas. So the Nityananda Vamsis, they're a particular cult. They were plotting to assassinate him. And they went to the local police magistrate to bribe him so that he wouldn't apprehend them after the murder. But the police magistrate, he said, even though he would normally accept a bribe, he could not be connected with the killing of a sadhu, a holy man. And he immediately informed Bhaktisiddhanta. And in this way, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's life was saved. So, then in 1930 and 31, there was a new kind of exhibition. A spiritual education was exhibited for the benefit of the public and particularly for the illiterate masses. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada demonstrated the import and the teachings of Vedic literature by these huge exhibitions in which he had pictorial representatives by means of dioramas, like lifelike doll displays. Like, in some of our temples, they have these displays still in Bombay, by the Jagannath Temple in Mayapur Temple itself, they have these exhibitions. So those were the brainchilds of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to attract the public, no matter who they were, lifelike exhibitions. And they were on the property of the Gaudiya Math in 1930 and 31 on the Calcutta Corporation grounds, and they lasted for a month. Each one lasted for a month. And then in 1933, very eager to spread the message of Mahaprabhu beyond the borders of India, Saraswati Thakur sent sannyasi disciples to England to preach and open up Gaudiya Math in the West. But they were unable to convince the Britishers to take up spiritual life. And ultimately, they returned. Actually, they were called back. But just, my phone is ringing. So they were called back by Bhaktisiddhanta. And then it was up to Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, to carry out his Guru Maharaj's orders. And he successfully did that, spreading Lord Chaitanya's Nam Sankirtan movement in every quarter of the globe, outside of India, assisted by his disciples, and now his grand disciples. And it will carry on into the future. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, he was so glad to reveal the transcendental glories of Krishna that whenever he found an eager listener, he would just go on and on speaking. He didn't know the constraints of time and space. And his health wasn't good. And he was disregarding the request of his medical advisors. So up to the last moment, he continued to deliver the message of the Supreme Lord to all people. And we saw the same thing with our Srila Prabhupada. Even on his deathbed, when he could not do anything at all, they would put the microphone by his mouth and he would speak the glorious purports. So this was the only purpose of Bhaktisiddhanta's appearance in the world. He did not appear here forced by the laws of material nature like an ordinary living entity, and neither did our Srila Prabhupada. Both worked upon the last moments of their life without reservation, disregarding physical pleasure, comfort, or relief. His whole life, their whole lives were absorbed in a mood of loving devotion to the Lord. He was fully devoted to the propagation of teaching of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the noble example of Bhaktisiddhanta's life and our Srila Prabhupada's life and conduct, his powerful speeches, his numerous publications are evidence of this fact, along with the disciples have followed, and in particular, Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So it was in 1936, while residing in Jagannath Puri on December 31st, at the age of 62, he left this mortal world and re-entered the loving pastimes of Sri Radha and Krishna, the spiritual atmosphere. So a few days before his disappearance, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati called his foremost disciples and showered his blessing upon all his devotees, and he gave the following instruction. With the utmost enthusiasm, preach the message of Sri Rup Raghunath. Our ultimate goal is to become a speck of dust touching the lotus feet of the followers of Rupa Goswami. All of you remain united in allegiance to the spiritual master, Ashraya Vigraha, in order to satisfy the senses of the transcendental entity of the non-dual knowledge. Do not give up the worship of Hari, even amidst hundreds of dangers, hundreds of assaults, or hundreds of persecutions. Do not become unenthusiastic upon seeing that the majority of people in this world are not accepting the message of Krishna's sincere worship. Never give up the glorification of the topics of Krishna. They are like your own personal bhajan, and you are very all in all. Be humble like a blade of grass and tolerant like a tree. Constantly glorify Lord Hari. So that was an order to one and all. And in the same way, we have that same order, that we have to stand tall in the face of adversity, even from our own members. It is a crazy time of Kali Yuga, but we've been given the way of saving ourselves, and the way of saving ourselves is to extend that same mercy to others. His divine grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai, His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami ki jai. So there's a little bit time left. I was just thinking it would be nice if others, if they had something they wanted to share, because there was so much I couldn't possibly mention everything. So maybe others could share a favorite pastime of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And definitely Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he was a follower, a deep, intimate follower of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta.
Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mother. When this schedule was being prepared, I believe it wasn't actually taken into consideration that you speaking today also coincides with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur's appearance, but somehow Krishna arranged it so beautifully that you are the
So
speaker
grateful
for
for
today.
this. I'm so
Yes,
happy for this because I love to speak about him. And
yes,
I volunteered, okay, I can do, but my godbrother Gaura Shakti was going to speak at the temple today. He wanted to do also. And then
yeah.
I said, okay, I have this opportunity, and I was feeling really fortunate.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Of course, dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, and reflections, or just like Mother requested, if anyone would like to share some pastimes of His Divine Grace, please, you may do so. But Mother, I believe that I have a skin like that of a crocodile. I have a very thick skin, but somehow speaking about Sri Bhaktisiddhanta gave me some goosebumps all over my body. It's bittersweet in the sense that a personality like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who had nothing to do with this material world, comes down to this material world on the order of Sri Krishna to help the conditioned souls.
He was
And
appointed.
these conditioned souls are preparing to kill him.
Yeah.
This is a very crazy world. Well, dear devotees, if anyone may have something to share, please indicate by using the hand emoji or your physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to ask, share. Well, my first question, Mother, before Srila Bhaktivinoda's descent, did the Gaudiya Vaishnav Sampradaya have a formal institution or formal institution? Okay.
That was one of the that is something that really was one of the dynamic offerings of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta.
Hmm.
There was definitely an existence of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, but an established and organized institution, no, that didn't exist.
Wow. Wow. Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. One thing I would like to ask also, and please, my humblest obeisance is that I do not want to make you feel uncomfortable, but you shared with us how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was following the instructions of his father to preach Lord Chaitanya's message all over the world. And therefore, he sent some of his foremost disciples, sannyasis, to come to the West to preach. And they were not successful. And Srila Prabhupada came to the West and he sent his disciples. This time they were not sannyasis.
Yeah,
they were grihastas.
He on the day we met on our way to the UK. We met him in Montreal because he was waiting for an extension of his visa to America. His visa had expired. So on the day we were leaving, he says, yes, my Guru Maharaj, he sent sannyasis, but they could not accomplish anything. And then he laughs, says, I'm sending grihastas. Not only grihastas, there was a baby.
Yeah. And this grihastas is your humble self here, and Shamsundra and a little Saraswati at that time. And somehow, by the mercy of the Acharya Sri Prabhupada, you were able to establish a wonderful Hare Krishna center. So the question I have in regards to that is that how does it happen that sometimes the guru gives instructions to a disciple and the disciple tries to follow the instructions but does not become successful? And another time, same instruction given to another devotee who probably may have the same enthusiasm as the other devotee who was not successful, but this time this devotee is successful. How does this happen?
You know, Krishna's mercy flows in many directions. So maybe that person, he didn't have the capacity. He was given the opportunity, didn't have the capacity. And this other person did. I mean, it's not a disgrace. If you, no endeavor or attempt is lost. I mean, unless you just throw, oh, I give up. But if you try, but you somehow you don't make it, but at least you tried. Krishna takes note.
Yeah.
You don't lose that effort, you know. And somebody else has the ability somehow or other. He got the ability through Krishna in his heart how to do it and what to do. I mean, had we gone earlier in time, maybe we wouldn't have been successful either.
Yeah.
So there's also this point about the timing. You know, timing is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was the right time.
Yes. Yeah,
And
I
what
think that's very important.
right people, not because of qualification. I mean, it was like because we just wanted to keep Prabhupada, and we weren't thinking, can I do it or not do it? We were going, we just took it and ran. We didn't sit down and like, okay, let's see, we have this much money. We had no money, you know. Do you have a list of people? We had no list of anybody. We knew nobody. But we had a determination, and that determination was to please Srila Prabhupada. That is what carried us through. If we thought about it logically, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
going over there, we're going to land, we're going to have no place to live, knowing nobody. I had a 6 weeks old baby. We're kind of like, you know, but that wasn't on our radar. On our radar was the determination to please Srila Prabhupada.
Well, thank you so much, Mother. And it's always a blessing to have your association and also to hear from you directly. That is so inspiring. Govinda, probably you have something to share. Please, you may unmute.
Govinda, probably you're driving again. I'm like, Shringa, Shringa. Is it
Hare
snow?
Krishna.
Govinda, is
Yeah.
it over there? Are you driving in the snow?
No, the roads are cleared now, and it's kind of sunny here.
Yeah,
So it's a dry road. Yeah. We
sunny,
had a
but
lot of snow last night.
yeah, that was pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm pleased to say to my respectful obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and all glories to your humble self.
Hare
And thank you very much for the wonderful, wonderful presentation as always. I have this question concerning the gentleman who had a question to ask Srila BHAKTISIDDHANTA Saraswati Maharaj. And he was asked to go and ask the question to the pujaris, and the pujaris engage him
Yeah.
in practical service.
Yep.
And after this, the rendering of that service, he said, my question is answered. So I'm just wondering what his question was.
I don't think that, I don't know, and I don't even think it's important. What's important was the humility of this person, his willingness to serve without it. You know, he was an educated, learned person, well-dressed, and he didn't put any of that on the table. He was humble and he was submissive. And Krishna reciprocated in his heart. He got the answer he needed. So that's the lesson that we also need to keep in mind. Not that we let me get some question and let's see what happens. Not in a challenge. He was humble and he was submissive. So
does that actually explains the power of devotional service, the power of rendering service, that it mitigates the heart from all the impurities and it reveals Krishna?
Yes, undoubtedly.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So I have to take my leave because my car is snowed in and I go and my there's snow everywhere. The roads, they cleared the roads, but I'm not on a road. So I have to get my car out and go to the temple for Pushpanjali.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Mother, for giving us this precious time of yours and sharing this depth of wisdom with us. And we pray to our gurus and also through you, since you're here with us, that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta on his divine auspicious appearance there today will bless us all to remain in the house of Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada, just as he gave the last instructions to his beloved disciples, that whether people take to this teaching of Lord Chaitanya or not, you should not get despaired and continue with your love for Guru and Krishna. So this is our humblest prayer, and we ask for this blessings that under all circumstances we serve at the lotus feet of Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Jai. So dear devotees, we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute, and we all chant the loudest Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation to our revered auntie and grand auntie for sharing her love and wisdom with us on this auspicious day of divine appearance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Mancha kalpa tarabhyasya,
Jai.
All glories to Her Grace, Malati Devi ki jai. All glories to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Mahotsava ki jai. All glories to assembled Vaishnava devotees ki jai. Hare
Jai.
Jai.